In their first phone call in 2 months, the leaders of the United States and China touched on both economic and security issues. President Trump urged Beijing to increase purchases of U.S. energy, while President Xi flagged the issue of U.S. arms sales to Taiwan.
2달 만에 이뤄진 미중 정상 간 통화에서 경제와 안보 현안이 동시에 오갔습니다. 트럼프 대통령은 중국의 미국산 에너지 구매를 제한했고 시진핑 주석은 대만 무기 판매 문제를 거론했습니다. President Trump and President Xi spoke on the phone. What do we know so far?
This is 2 months after their last contact on November 24th, and Trump is supposed to visit China in April. So ahead of that visit, Trump said the two leaders discussed a wide range of topics, lots of different things, including trade, military issues, Taiwan, a big issue for China, obviously, the war in Ukraine, and the situation in Iran as well, where the regime has been killing protesters. He also stressed the importance of maintaining stable U.S.-China relations and preserving personal trust between the two leaders, because they are really the world's two biggest superpowers, after all.
트럼프 4월 중국 방문을 앞두고 시진핑과 새해 첫 통화를 했는데요. 트럼프가 통화가 길고 상세하며 excellent 했다고 평가했습니다. So the exact quote is long, detailed, and excellent. Okay, what were some of the key messages in terms of the economic and security issues between the two countries?
So Trump was pushing China to increase purchases of U.S. oil and natural gas and a lot of other agricultural products as well. He said apparently China agreed to buy 20 million tons of U.S. soybeans this season and 25 million tons next season. So there could be some kind of signals that China will be adjusting away from its heavy reliance on, it gets most of its energy these days from Russia, Iran, and Venezuela as well.
Okay, and what did Xi Jinping want in return?
Xi, of course, underscored that Taiwan remains the most important issue in U.S.-China relations, and he pushed Washington to handle arms sales to Taiwan with caution. And then the state-run, the Chinese news agency, Xinhua, reported that Trump said he, quote, attaches importance to China's position on Taiwan. So respecting China's position.
Right. 트럼프는 중국의 러시아나 이란, 베네수엘라산 대신 미국산 석유와 가스를 구매하라고 제안했고요. 반대로 시진핑은 미국과 중국 관계에서 대만 문제가 가장 중요하다며 미국이 대만에 무기를 파는 문제에 신중해야 한다고 강조했습니다.
But at the same time, the U.S. is also moving to build a trade bloc to diversify critical mineral supply chains, and Vice President J.D. Vance actually formally invited allies, including South Korea, to join. And that is a clear effort to reduce dependence on China for those critical minerals.
Right. Let's have a look at some expressions there.
Let's do it.
Touch on something.
To touch on would usually be to touch on a subject. So you deal briefly. You talk about it briefly in a short way.
Touch on something, 뭐뭐를 잠깐 언급하다, 뭐뭐를 다루다라는 뜻입니다.
네.
For example, I'll briefly touch on the main points. 핵심만 간단히 짚고 가겠습니다.
We're touching on a few expressions from the news story.
We are. Let's touch on this one. To flag an issue.
Well, if you put a flag in something, it makes it a lot more noticeable. So to flag something, in particular a problem or an issue, it means to point it out, to notice it and raise attention about it. So, for example, I want to flag an issue with the budget or something like that.
Okay. 우리가 깃발을 세우듯이 이 부분이 중요해, 이거 문제야 라고 하는 거예요.
Right.
문제를 지적하다, 알리다, to flag an issue. In their first phone call in 2 months, the leaders of the United States and China touched on both economic and security issues. President Trump urged Beijing to increase purchases of U.S. energy, while President Xi flagged the issue of U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. Now, coming back to Korea, let's talk about Samsung Electronics.
Good news for Samsung and for anyone who has their Samsung stocks in their portfolio. Samsung Electronics crossed the 1 quadrillion won mark in market capitalization becoming the first Korean company to enter the 1 quadrillion won club. The milestone was driven by a semiconductor supercycle, improving earnings, and aggressive shareholder return policies that have helped underpin the stock.
삼성전자 시가총액이 1천조 원을 넘어서며 국내 기업 가운데 처음으로 천조 클럽에 올랐습니다. 반도체 슈퍼사이클과 실적 개선, 적극적인 주주 환원 정책이 맞물린 결과입니다. 삼성 일렉트로닉스 국민주죠. 우리나라 국민 505만 명이 보유한 삼성전자가 어제 장중 시총 1천조 원을 터치했습니다. Surpassing the 1 quadrillion won mark.
Right. Briefly crossing that mark,
Yeah.
it's ranking 15th globally among listed companies. So it surpassed China's Tencent and Visa, which is an American company. Among Asian firms, Samsung now ranks second after Taiwan's TSMC, which is a semiconductor company. Only 12 companies in the US have ever reached that valuation. And it's the first time for a Korean company to hit that milestone.
That's right. 장중 시총이 1천조 원을 넘어서면서 전 세계 상장사 중에서는 15위, 아시아 기업 중에서는 대만 TSMC에 이어 2위에 등극했습니다.
네.
다만 차익 실현을 하려는 매도세가 이어지면서 오늘 종가 기준으로 어제 16만 9,400원 그 고점에서부터는 약 6% 하락했습니다.
Right, because people, when it hit that high point, they wanted to get their profits
Yes.
out, right?
Now's the time. Sell, sell, sell. Meanwhile, the Nasdaq fell sharply overnight as well. That affects the Korean market as well.
Of course, yeah. A lot of global markets affected by that. It was, triggered by an AMD shock, which sparked a broad tech sell-off. So AMD's earnings are solid, but it gave a conservative forecast for its future. So that raised concerns over slowing future profit growth, especially in AI-related demand.
Okay. So Samsung, it touched this quadrillion won mark. Quadrillion. How many zeros are we talking about?
We've got 15 zeros in a quadrillion, a lot of zeros.
Quadrillion, 천조입니다. Just to do a recap. Million, 100만, billion, 10억, trillion, 조, and quadrillion, 천조, 공이 15개 있고요.
Right.
And market capitalization, 시가총액, 우리가 시총으로 줄이는 것처럼 market cap으로도 많이 줄입니다.
Yeah.
And to underpin something,
Just to support it.
뭐뭐를 뒷받침하다. 뭐 data underpins the policy. 데이터가 정책의 근간이다. Trust underpins the entire system. 신뢰가 이 시스템을 떠받치고 있다. Those were two examples there. Here's the article again. Samsung Electronics crossed the 1 quadrillion won mark in market capitalization, becoming the first Korean company to enter the 1 quadrillion won club. The milestone was driven by a semiconductor supercycle, improving earnings and aggressive shareholder return policies that have helped underpin the stock.